South African fintech startup Mama Money's announced the expansion of its money transfer service into Nigeria, Ghana and Tanzania. The startup that slashed the cost for Zimbabweans living in South Africa to send money home when it launched 2 years ago is expected to have a similar impact with its expansion. And co-founder Matthew Kokilon joins us on the line now. Matthew, thanks so much for your time today. So looking at your success reaped in Zimbabwe, yes, it's come on the back of demand for the service, but it couldn't have been an easy sell where trust needs to be built, especially when it comes to technology and using it to deal with your money. Or did Zimbabwe's situation provide fertile ground enough for a startup like this to thrive in?
Yes, sure. So the Zimbabwean market is obviously the biggest out of South Africa, so it was a natural starting point for a money transfer startup where, we could be busy with Zimbabwe for the next 5-10 years and still not, achieve everything that we wanted to there. So, but on the back of obviously our success in Zim, we decided that it was time now to start testing the waters in some new markets.
And what you're targeting, Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, what's the criteria you're using for expansion into a particular domain?
Well, we're obviously looking at the size of the migrant population in South Africa for starters. And the second thing is the access that, how are they serviced in terms of their money transfer at the moment. So quite interestingly, we're speaking to a lot of Ghanaians and a lot of Tanzanians, and there isn't a lot of options at all for them to send money. So they really struggle, they pay high costs, and it's unreliable. So we're looking at all those factors, and obviously we're looking at the size and putting all those pieces together and as we develop.
Matthew, what you've highlighted before is that central to your success in the South Africa-Zimbabwe corridor is the registration agent network, inbound and outbound call centers, your vendor network as well, successful integration into Zimbabwe's financial system. What are the biggest challenges faced in building a network as extensive as that?
So I think it's as a startup, it's about, really putting your time and effort in things that are going to get you traction really early on. And, there's a lot of options and a lot of decisions that need to be made. And it's really about, making the right decisions for your business at the right time. One of the big things that we invested a lot of time in, and obviously the engine room of our business, is our 650 agents that work for us on the ground in South Africa. We're growing that up to 1,000 by the end of this year. And also through our partnership with Pep Stores, who act as a de facto agent for us, where customers can walk into a Pep store and register for our service. It just makes us, our scope is across the whole of South Africa, and we can cover the whole country wherever migrants are working and sending money home.
Give us some of the background to building relationships like that. How difficult is it getting buy-in and bringing partners on board on an endeavor like this?
So yes, it's time consuming. I think that you've got to, the first step in our world was getting a license from the South African Reserve Bank. So we were issued a money transfer license in December 2014. And obviously the process of getting that license was very rigorous. And as you would expect, it's not an easy thing to get. But, once we had that license, then, approaching banks and other retail partners, even though you're a startup and you're a new kid, if you can get through the Reserve Bank process, and people will sit down, they will listen to you, and they see the potential, and they see the opportunity. So, once we were in the door with the Reserve Bank, it very much opened a lot of doors for us.
In fact, so much so that you're now also targeting a country outside of Africa for entry later this year. How competitive a landscape are you looking at as you venture offshore?
So, yeah, we're looking at the Asian corridors, particularly Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and China. Again, I think there is a huge opportunity, not a lot of service for those countries. So there is an opportunity to do a play to Asia. And, as an aggressive startup, we want to get involved in as many different markets as possible and push for traction.
How much tweaking to the service solution would need to come to the fore as you venture down this path? Or would a copy-paste model suffice no matter which countries you're operating between?
Sure, I think that's the beauty of a tech startup is that, once you have the technology in place, then a lot of the copy and pasting and systems that you invested in early on that are there, and, so we invested a lot in our technology with our bank-grade software to get to the point where we're able to really scale without having to worry about the system's ability to handle the volumes and what we want to do. So it is very much a case of put down the piping, make sure that the technology is good, and then once you've got a workable model, you can replicate it in different markets. And yeah, sure, the markets will be slightly different, but the basic business principles and technology will always remain the same.
Matthew, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for having joined us on the line this evening. Matthew Kokilon is co-founder of Mama Money. In the meantime, artificial intelligence exhibited by machines, is expected to be amongst the top 3 tech trends set to dominate the African scene in 2017. And Ashley Anthony is the CEO of Isazi Consulting, an artificial intelligence company, and joins us in studio now to make more sense of what we're looking at. Thanks so much, Ashley, for your time today. So your company hopes to put Africa on the map when it comes to artificial intelligence. But let's start off with the basic here. AI. What are we looking at?
Sure. So artificial intelligence is giving a machine the ability to think. So we often describe or think of artificial intelligence is what electricity was to pumps and everything manual in the 1800s is what artificial intelligence is to us today.
And how much of an evolution are we seeing on the African landscape? What kind of development do we have to boast in that department compared to our global peers?
I think there's quite a bit of push for larger organizations to shift towards a more data-driven thinking business, which is where the artificial intelligence comes in. I do think that there is some sort of, there's something that speaks, or there's an idea out there that people feel that good innovative solutions or disruptive tech has to come out from your Silicon Valley or a hub in Israel or something of that sort. I believe that in Africa we have a lot of powerful scientists, and when teamed up together we could actually build or create some very impactful solutions.
That on the supply side. What about the demand side of things? So, what kind of demand are these very skilled African scientists actually catering to? Is it more so a local demand, or at this stage of the game, are we catering to more the export side of things?
I think there is definitely a large number of African scientists that are going overseas, but at Isazi we try to keep them on the continent and also working on Africa's problems. But yes, there's definitely a pull for them to
Because we often hear about Africa, yes, being a laggard, but having the benefit of, leapfrogging certain developments that have got us to a certain point. So what needs to shift in order to use some of these skills and expertise locally?
I think there has to be a change in the way a lot of local or African businesses think, in the sense that it's not your normal analyst or BI person, and also start adjusting the way they work with these individuals. Because I think data scientists are definitely a bit of left field thinkers and need an environment, or need a certain type of environment to be creative and think freely in.
How absorbed are these skills in the FinTech space specifically?
I think in the FinTech space, one of the industries to be investing the most amount of money in. I think just based on their investment and their thinking, they're definitely ahead of the curve when it comes to a number of other industries.
Do you have socio-economic factors that come to bear and hinder the kind of development we could be seeing? Because one assumes where you've got artificial intelligence, an element that streamlines job functions, for example, the fear is that it would bring with it the loss of jobs.
Sure, I think that's definitely something to be to consider. For example, with the self-driving cars, drivers are the most, I think, have one of the highest numbers of employment or type of jobs, and self-driving cars would affect that. But at the same time, I think artificial intelligence could also allow a lot of individuals at companies to think of new things and use their skills or use human skills more effectively, rather than doing certain mundane tasks.
Oh, with that coming to the fore more so, and companies, this kind of realization dawning for companies, what kind of investments are being made in artificial intelligence specifically, and upping the expertise base we've got to work with?
I think majority of large organizations have recognized that if they don't shift to becoming completely data-driven soon, there's a strong chance that they will become redundant. If we look at all the companies that we admire today, your Google, Facebook, Uber, Alibaba, we see that these companies are not online shopping malls or taxi companies or bed and breakfast. They're actually data companies. So I think the bigger companies and forward-thinking companies who've recognized this are definitely making more of an investment and initiative to engage with the startup community, which is great.
Sure. Well, let's leave it there. Ashley, thanks so much for having joined us in studio today. Of course, Ashley Anthony is CEO of Isazi Consulting, and that's where we leave things with you for this week's episode of Africa Inc. But we'll be back same time, same place next week. Until then, from me and the rest of the team, it's goodbye.